How are you, gents? SBG here again on this Wednesday morning. I want to briefly talk about loneliness and being alone, which is becoming a serious problem in our current society. And I know that there is quite a big difference between loneliness and being alone, as some people, they find peace in solitude. However, some people are constantly lonely, and I think this can be very debilitating and could lead to other problems. As we know, depression is a serious form of mental illness, and I think loneliness can contribute greatly to that. But what I really want to focus on is the young men who feel isolated, lonely, disenfranchised in our current so-called modern society, and how these young men feel, and if they are lonely for considerable periods of time, what sort of consequences could arise from this. We've seen what happened with Elliot Rodger. I think that extreme loneliness, could have contributed to his actions. Not sure about Alec Manassian. I don't know that as much about him, but that's an extreme case, obviously. But I think that for most guys, especially the young men in their late teens, early 20s, if they have been lonely for a long time, these guys are very vulnerable to exploitation, and they can be taken advantage of by women and led to the plantation. As we know, there are many men, younger men and older men, who are very thirsty. They can be easily exploited, taken advantage of, used and abused. And I think that these guys need to be very careful, because they could get themselves in serious trouble when they suffer this exploitation by women and they get used up. These are the guys who are most likely to be led onto the plantation. And if some guy who is non-MGTOW, non-red pill, and he's been married before, he's been in a serious relationship, and he has been alone for a few years, he is also a prime candidate to be led back onto the plantation. And these are the guys who can suffer the worst. So, and I've been a bit like that before. I used to be actually very blue pill before I found the red pill and I became MGTOW. And I sort of understand how thirsty men can get for affection, attention from women, for sex and what we consider to be love. And I don't really believe in love. I think love is a lie, and there have been a few videos made on that topic. I think Sandman made the first one, but there have been other ones also. I agree with that, because most relationships nowadays are based upon expediency, and it's what a woman can get from you, what sort of financial advantage, or what she can get you to do for her. So you become like a workhorse, and other guys have also spoken about this. So I think that now, in this extremely woman-orientated world, very gynocentric world, we must encourage men to focus on things outside of females, to develop various interests and hobbies, I suppose. And if we can encourage young men to broaden their horizons and have a more holistic view of the world and of life, I think these young guys will be a lot better off. But I know that procreation and wanting to be with a woman, sleep with a woman, have sex with a woman is a biological imperative, but maybe now a lot of men are going to have to start fighting this biological urge, because it's turning out that it is very bad for us and there are many negative consequences, and we're going to have to develop a more spiritual sort of side and attitude toward life. And I just made a video before about men moving to Asia, and some of these guys are finding these Shangnu leftover woman girlfriends and wives in China and Vietnam, but I generally think that is not a good idea either. So as our society is rapidly changing, men are going to have to make choices, and there's always a consequence for the choices we make, and we can make good or bad decisions. So it's time to step back, look at the big picture, look at how our life choices are really going to affect us, because now is not a good time for men to just blindly go out and get married and not think about the long-term damage they can do to their life. And it can even lead to mental problems and suicide. And suicide can be a result of loneliness. We have seen in the Australian media recently the issue of youth suicide in Aboriginal communities has been discussed fairly often, but the amount of youth suicide occurring within the young white male community has not received anywhere near the same sort of attention. And I think the suicide rate for men between 18 and 30 years old, especially young white men, this really needs to be studied carefully and addressed, and we have to try and come up with solutions to this problem and try to rectify this problem. It's not going to be easy, but we should not just give up, and we have to really think carefully about what's happening to the young men in our Western societies. Anyway, gents, once again, I always appreciate feedback when you leave comments, and if you like the vids, I hope you'll subscribe. That's all for today. I've got to go and do a few things, do a little bit of work now, but hopefully I can make another video soon, and I'll talk to you later. Cheers.